Property taxes in Ohio aren't just high, they're becoming a trigger for forced selling. Today, we're going to hear from Lizzie, an Ohio mom who started asking why property tax bills keep rising and ended up uncovering a system built on penalties, tax delinquencies, out of state tax lien investors, and political half measures disguised as relief. Why hundreds of thousands of Ohioans are already behind, how counties profit when people fall short, and why the fixes you've heard about from state politicians barely matter. This is what's really happening and why people are finally pushing back. Hey Lizzie, how you doing? Welcome back to the Ohio Housing Nerd.
Hi, Jason. Thank you for having me again. It's a pleasure. I was really excited to come on.
Yeah, well, shoot. I mean, I've had a lot of requests from viewers to have you back. And I think a lot of people relate to you, and you're all about this fight for property tax relief and property tax abolishment in Ohio. You've got deep knowledge in the Ohio financial system, in the Ohio economy, and certainly how we get taxed as Ohioans. And so, for the folks out there listening, even if they're not in Ohio, they can probably relate to this as well. I'll let you just kind of take it and tell us what's happening in Ohio property taxes, what's happening in the Ohio economy that you want to address, and kind of bring our viewers up to speed as far as what the latest and greatest is in the effort to help this property tax burden.
Yeah, thank you. I'm so excited to be on. We jive. We have a good time on this podcast. So
Oh
I've been
yeah.
on a podcast. They're like a little dry, a little more serious. So it's nice to just relax and be myself. So what's going on? Axe Ohio Tax. We're still collecting signatures. We I think I'm allowed to say this. We have the minimum 44 counties at least. I think we're much higher than that that we need. So for those of you who don't know, you need to have at least half the counties, 5% from at least half the counties. So that's that. We've done that. We've met that threshold. So now we're just sheer volume, right? We're just collecting as many signatures as possible. I think we're up to like 2,000 volunteers. Last time I talked, I think we had about 1,000. So, yeah, it's funny because like I go places and people are like, "I know you, I signed the property tax," and I'm like, "Yeah." So it's cool. And then we got the haters. It's okay. They're allowed. They're entitled to their opinions. So yeah, so we're rocking and rolling. We're still hoping for November petitions. And I'm saying this to volunteers who might be listening. Petitions need to be sent in immediately. I was joking with the people on the board that like, what's going to happen? People are hoarding their petitions, and then in June you're going to get like 100,000 petitions mailed to you. So we were laughing, trying to offset that. So yeah, they are scanning them. They are validating them. It's really exciting. The movement is definitely. I mean, the momentum has been just wild. And it's cool to see Ohioans really come together for something that's good for Ohioans, and then obviously that's debatable. But I think it's overall it's been this really positive thing for Ohio. And I'm still holding to that if we can be the first state, how cool would that be?
Right.
Florida's not going to be the first state.
Yeah. So I'm sorry I interrupted you. So you think Ohio could be the first state?
I think Ohio could be the first state to actually eliminate all property taxes. So Florida kind of was misleading, which I'm a little bummed about. Ron DeSantis came out, we're going to eliminate property taxes. We're going to do it through the state legislature. And I thought, well, this is amazing. Like, well, I was going to get my popcorn and just sit back and watch Florida do their thing because they're usually pretty awesome at that. And then it finally came out like, oh, well, they're just going to eliminate all non-school property taxes. But if you know anything about your property taxes, most of your property taxes are school property taxes. So they are eliminating all non-school property taxes, and then they're going to increase their sales tax. But you're still going to have, 70% of your property tax is your school tax. So you're still going to have that burden.
Okay, so since we're on that topic, I'm going to pull a thread on that a little bit. So the I get a lot of viewer comments that say we need to be like Florida and they eliminated property tax. And I'm like, I don't think they have yet. And it's not a big shocker to me that the politician came out and said, I'm going to get rid of property tax. And then, well, it's not, it's just non-school tax. Do you know how much of the property tax bill in Florida is being eliminated? I don't know the details. I don't. I was just
I
curious.
don't know. I don't know the numbers. What I know is so they're going to eliminate basically fire, EMS service, property taxes, library, senior center, things like that. But they're going to keep anything that is educational. So your school district, BOED, things like that. So those property taxes are going to remain. Are you going to see something fruitful come from it? For sure. If you pay $10,000, though, you're still going to have $7,000 approximately between 56 and $7,000 to pay. So you'll eliminate about 30 to 35% of your property taxes. But then you have sales tax, right? So it's like this give and take. I don't know. It'd be interesting to see the numbers of, like, since your property taxes aren't really going away, what you're then going to be spending. Like, maybe it'll be the same, right? It's just like rob Peter to pay Paul. Like, you're switching which hand you give the money out of. So I was a little disappointed with Florida. And actually, okay, so really fast, because Ohio did a similar thing. I'm gonna call out somebody. Are you ready?
Yeah, please.
So Vivek Ramaswamy came out, and there's all these headlines. You can look them up about let's see, in the summer and in the fall. We're going to eliminate property taxes. We're going to eliminate property taxes, all this stuff. And then all of a sudden, like, now his tune is, well, we're going to roll back property taxes. We're going to amend some things. And his proposals are pretty much what the state legislature has already passed. So it wouldn't really make a difference. It's not anything new, I guess I'll say, as compared to what the state legislature's already passed through what, and DeWine signed off on in January, but, or in December. So yeah, there's a lot of politicians that, like, they do a lot of backpedaling, and I think it's because it's a lot of money, right? I mean, it really is. Like, these states are bringing in massive amounts of revenue, and you've got every association under the sun, lobbying groups, this person, the Governors Association, the State Legislatures Association, the County Commissioners Association, the Real Estate Association. You've got all these associations, and they're like, no, you can't do that. And then they're all donors, right? So then you're like, well, I can't do that. So what can I do? And your hands are really tied. And so I'm like waiting for the guy who's going to come out and be like, F it, we're just going to get rid of them. But as far as governors go, that hasn't happened. So
Well, so let me ask on the uh I'm really curious to find out how much the Florida sales tax goes up from it. I'd be curious to know, and obviously we may not know yet, but something maybe I'll research. And then, w- since we're on the topic of politicians, there's a guy that in Ohio that people keep sending me to, and I've contacted him to see if he wants to come on the channel, and haven't received a response. His first name's Casey. I don't
yes,
know the guy,
yeah,
and I guess
Casey. Yeah, go ahead.
so I was told that he was like somebody that was for abolishment of property tax. And it's just, I respond in the same way when someone says that Vivek is going to remove property tax. I'm like, I don't think so. It seems to me there's not one politician, unless you know of one, that wants to tackle this thing or wants to really address it and really and certainly be interviewed by somebody like me that's not going to let them just skate by. So it's like I don't know if any of them are going to really contribute to a solution, honestly.
Yeah, so it's funny, I had called someone earlier today to, like, make sure I had my facts correct. So Casey Putsch is running for governor, for anybody who doesn't know. I don't know that he's officially filed. A petition for candidacy is due February 4th, so we'll see if he gets the signatures and if he files. As of right now, though, he is running. And so he does support the abolishment of property taxes. He's totally on board. He's actually an interesting person. He's got an interesting website. And then Marcel Sturbridge, who's running for Ohio Secretary of State, is also in full support of abolishment of the property tax. Now, Secretary of State, he doesn't really have a lot of jurisdiction in that area versus governor, who might have to sign something or deal with legislation. but he is a full supporter. Those are the only two statewide candidates who are supporters that I know of. Okay. Um, and then it was funny. So my fact checking was who in the state legislature has been a supporter. And we have two people who have signed our petition. I don't know if they've actively come out and said they support, but by signing, I assume there's some passive support. And that's Jen Gross, and she's out of Westchester, I believe, near Cincinnati. And then Tex Fisher. I don't know what area he's from, but I was looking at the stats because I was like, okay, so we have two people in the state legislature who have signed the petition, I think they've been a little more vocal about it. So we have about 132 members in our state legislature, and we have 89 Republicans. So we got 2 Republicans out of 89. So listen, folks, just remember that when they're like, "We're a super majority Republican Ohio, we can get so much stuff done." They're not. They're not going to do that. Um, so yeah, that makes me laugh internally because I like to rag on the Republicans. I am a Republican, by the way, but I love to rag on my own party because they're the worst. Um, so, and I know you and I talked about this. I am not loyal to a party. I am loyal to people, right? Like I have values that align with a certain party, but that party often leaves me, and so I align myself to people. And that's, I think, part of why I've been involved with Axe Ohio Tax is because I care about Ohioans, right? So, so yeah, that's who's supporting Axe Ohio Tax. There's not a lot of people in
Yeah.
that.
Well, we definitely you definitely have the numbers when it comes to grassroots efforts, though. I mean, you have a lot of support there, right?
Right.
Real quick, it is interesting. You mentioned as we talk about politicians, and you're like, oh, the party left me. There's a guy that I interviewed. I did an interview. Was it Friday? And I've had him on my channel before. Um, his name's Matt Deemer. He actually ran for Congress a while back. Younger guy ran for Congress and didn't win, but he runs a podcast and a Substack called The Angry Democrat. And he is like, it's not about me being a Democrat and angry at the Republicans. It's more about me feeling disenfranchised from the Democratic Party, what they historically have been, what they've represented in the past. And so he is uh, very pragmatic, but it's just funny because he's in that same category. And he calls property tax basically tyranny. He's like, it's tyranny. It's a complete tyranny. At the same time, he's like, we got to figure out how to replace that revenue. So I'm sure we're going to get into that. And that's kind of just, I kind of went off on a tangent, but the floor is yours, Lizzie. So please, the people don't want to
So
hear from me. They want to hear
I
from
have
you.
a book, and so somebody had made a comment on the last time I was on your podcast. They had made a comment that I was like a libertarian in La La Land, and I was like, well, it's better to be a libertarian in La La Land than to be a serf, right? In under tyranny. So I read this fascinating book. It's called The Politics of Obedience. There you go. You can see it. The Discourse of Voluntary Servitude. It was written in the 1500s. All right. So it just goes to show that history is never new. It just repeats itself over and over and over. And you said tyranny. And so I want to read something to you that I had found super fascinating. And it says, tyrants would distribute largesse, a bushel of wheat, a gallon of wine, and assessors, and then everyone would shamelessly cry, "Long live the king." The fools did not realize that they were merely recovering a portion of their own property, that the ruler could not have given them what they were receiving without having first taken it. So, in other words, when politicians give you something, they're giving you back a portion of what you gave them, right? So, um, that's tyranny. So for La La Land and libertarianism, but and there's another quote in here that says, "There's nothing that makes men so subservient to a tyrant's cruelty as their property." And I feel like that, yeah, right. But listen, we're talking 500 years ago. This guy wrote this book, and I'm like reading it. And I'm like, that is me. That's today. Like, um, it's by
What was the name
Etienne.
of the book again? Sorry to
Oh,
interrupt. I just wanted
it's
to
called
get it.
The Politics of Obedience, The Discourse of Voluntary Servitude by Etienne de la Boétie. He was French. He was a Frenchman. The French, they cut off each other's heads and do crazy things. But
Wow.
Um, but yeah, so basically I've I've had so okay. A lot of people have been asking me like, what are we gonna replace it with? What are we gonna replace it with? And the reality is we're not. Like we shouldn't. Like we should replace some, but like we really shouldn't replace a lot. And I have charts because and so I realize like I have to show people why I'm not insane when I say this thing because I think and the whole point by the way of this book is that you start with a generation that is entirely free. And then every subsequent generation loses a little bit of their freedom until you get to the last generation and they've lost so much freedom that they have never experienced real freedom and they don't know what it's like to live in real freedom. So they just accept being a serf or a servitude. And the and that's why like grandma always says things like, well, when my day, blah, 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 blah. And it's because with each generation, like we have been stripped more and more and more of our freedoms. And then we just accept it. And then the following generation grows up and that's their norm, right? We were just talking about this coffee, $10 a cup. Like the 17-year-old, that's their norm. Whereas like my dad's 91 and he's like, I remember when it was 5 cents, and you're like, because that's his norm. And so we can't and like we just can't accept that. Like I think we need to push back on that. So I say these kind of wild things like we shouldn't replace it. And then people get in a tizzy and it's okay. It's okay. I like it. I like discourse. It's good. So I will show you my chart so that people can understand why we don't need to replace every single penny that we currently spend. There you go.
Here,
That's
this.
yep,
And
yep.
so, real quick, I don't know if you want to mention this or not, but like I did some research and found out that our total budget on tax revenue is actually 48 billion, but 24 billion, maybe, and this is the data I found. I'm not sure if this is what you've seen, but 24 billion of the property tax is abated
Yes.
and 24 is actually taken in.
Yeah, so that's funny because Axe Ohio Tax just Citizens for Property Tax Reform, they posted that on their Facebook page recently that
Right.
that is yeah, that's the number. And it's wild. And so you can see like the burden is obviously then placed on a smaller class of people because other people get abatements, right? And it's funny because we talk about like the constitutionality of taxes, like, well, you can't tax someone a higher tax than someone else by class or by money or by this or by that. Like there's all these constitutionality of taxes, and then yet there's like exceptions, and you're like, well, why do they get to pay less and I don't? Right? I guess it's just like what loophole there is or who is writing the law and you're on your behalf. So this is a chart, and I decided to pick 2 states. So, well, 3 states. There's Ohio, obviously, but then there's Tennessee and Florida. And I picked Florida because we all know it's booming. Everybody's moving to Florida. I picked Tennessee because I've had a lot of friends go down there, and they're like, "Come to Tennessee. It's so the grass is always greener, right?" And so I was like, "I don't know. Is it? I want to see. Like, is it really that much better? Like, well, how much? Where would my money go?" So this is based on $150,000 income, and I took very similar sized cities when I looked at sales tax and things like that because those are different, right? Certain taxes vary by city. So it's $150,000 income and on a $600,000 home. Okay, so in Ohio, your total tax, and it's hard to calculate sales tax, right? Because that depends on your spending, but that would equate to about $15,000 in taxes. Now, mine's actually higher than that. Like, so I have a school tax on top of that. So I have a 1% school tax on top of that. Yeah, city. So it's a city school tax and it's based on your income. So, on 150,000, you'd add another $1,500. So you're looking at 16,700 and, 47,000. And so, um, and then so then I decided to compare. So with Tennessee and Florida, because they have no income tax, there's no city tax, there's no state tax. So you're pretty much left with property tax and sales tax. But what was interesting was like Florida's sales tax is actually lower than Ohio's. So I was like, now they have tourism and blah, 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 blah. And that's what people argue with me. Florida has tourism and they have hotel tax and they've got this and they've got that. And, yada yada yada. And they do have all those things, and that's great. And then, but my rebuttal is on the next page. But you can see Tennessee, you'd be at about $2,600, and then Florida, you'd be at about $6,700. Florida's property taxes are similar to Ohio, but they have no income tax, right? So if you go to the next slide, this shows you why Florida can have no income tax, right? It's not just tourism. Annual spending. So we're going to start actually in the middle of the chart. I should have probably made this a little different. So the green line where it says total year 2000. So Ohio's annual spending was about 39 billion. Tennessee was 18 billion. Florida was 52 billion. All right. Then you go to 2025 right above that. Ohio is at 105 billion. Tennessee's at 52.8 and Florida's at 114. So what's interesting is Ohio's like almost spending the same as Florida, right? A, we're not geographically as large, and B, we don't have nearly as large of a population, right? So then when you look at population growth, which is at the very bottom, our population in Ohio has been relatively flat. We've depopulated some years, we've populated a little bit some years. We're pretty much just flat. Whereas Florida's grown 44%, right? And Tennessee's growing too, it's 26%. So then we go up to the top where it's per capita. And this is where you can really see the problem with Ohio. We have increased our spending per capita 159% in 25 years, whereas Florida's remained relatively flat. So they're only spending as much as they need to per person. Their spending is in line with their growth, I guess is basically a good way to say it. Whereas in Ohio, we're not growing, but we keep spending a lot more, like a lot more. We have a huge spending problem. We love money in Ohio. We love to spend other people's money in Ohio, and it's a problem. And
So,
I've talked to
well, real quickly, I had a question here. So, are you saying when I look at this data, what jumps out to me is that you said, well, Florida's income or Florida's spending per capita is proportionate more so to their growth versus Ohio, but it looks like their spending per capita really, I mean, that hasn't grown 44%.
No, it
So
had.
like, yeah, I mean, this is crazy. So you're saying we've only grown our population. I just want to make sure that I'm wrapping my head around this. You're saying that we've only grown our population 4% since the year 2000, but the per capita has grown from $3,400 a person, basically, right, in the state that we spend money on. We're spending $3,400 a person in 2000. In the year 2025, we're spending nearly $9,000 a person. So we're spending a lot more than, I mean, what are we spending $105 billion on?
I would make a joke right now. I don't know if have you heard
Please
about.
do it.
Okay, have you heard have you seen the satire, The Quality Leering Center?
Mm-mm.
So you got to look up this guy. It's like the funniest video I've seen. It's about the Minnesota fraud. So there was a daycare in Minnesota that literally they misspelled the sign on the daycare, and it was Quality Leering Center. They left off the N, and then literally they put over the sign outside the daycare, they taped an N on it. And so this guy decided to make a whole spoof of it. Now they're selling sweatshirts. It's actually hilarious. I think it's genius. I think we have fraud. Like, I think we spend too much and we have fraud. And actually, I had talked to somebody in the state house when they had passed their most recent budget. And I said, what in the heck is going on? And they were like, honestly, Medicaid expansion, because Ohio is one of the states that decided to expand Medicaid under Obama. And it was under Kasich. Thank you. So Medicaid expansion is eating up about, it was like 35% of our budget. Now we're up to almost 50% of our budget is Medicaid spending. And then I think it's fraud from, I mean, listen, I know this is going to be deeply unpopular with people. You cannot bring in all these refugees and expect them to not need services. I mean, at one point or another, right? They've come from a third world country, totally impoverished, you know, and we'll give them a benefit of the doubt, right? We'll just say that it's all legit. It's all on the up and up. They're still going to need to get their feet off the ground, right? So we are providing services to them at some point. Now, whether or not they get off those services, I don't know, and that was another thing I had mentioned to somebody. I was giving a presentation, and I said, if you live in government housing, you're not paying property taxes. But guess what? You could pay a sales tax, right? So that's I had to explain to people, anybody who can hold a dollar can pay a sales tax, right? Whereas the property tax burden is really primarily on homeowners and renters through, landlords and rent and blah blah blah. But I would say most of the burden's on property owners. So yes, we spend a lot of money here. Yeah, we do. We spend a lot of money. It's a problem. And yeah, and it's unsustainable. And I think that was the entire reason why Axe Ohio Tax started, is because the property tax burden is unsustainable, the spending is unsustainable. I mean, even looking like, and it's so interesting, like your county to your state to your federal, it all mimics each other, right? We're looking at the federal government and we're in the trillions. I was just listening to somebody talk about, under Bush, we were at like a trillion. Under Obama, we went up to 15 trillion. And then under Biden, now we're at like 51 trillion. And you're like, that's crazy. And so you can see this like ledge, right? We're all like hanging off a cliff right now, deciding like, do we jump? Do we just keep spending into oblivion, or do we pull back? And I think I think a lot of people in power in Ohio, they're just so addicted to spending. Like they're addicted to money and greed, and there's so much of it. I mean, when you look at these numbers, I can tell you right now, because you had briefly talked about property tax. So I decided to look at property tax revenue from 2020 to 2025. And it's important to know this because we're going to go over the bills that they passed and how I call it my band-aid for bullet holes. Property tax revenue in 2020 for the entire state of Ohio was 16.2 billion. And now they just brought in for 2025, 22.5 billion. And so it's a 39% increase in 5 years. So they've increased their revenue 39%. Now, what they're going to tell you is, we're going to give you guys back 3 billion. And that goes back to my book, right? We're going to give you back $3 billion. And they're making it like, you read all the headlines, Ohio to give back massive amounts of money to Ohioans. And then you're like, well, $3 billion of $22.5 billion really isn't massive. It's 13%. But also, what they don't tell you is it's over many years. So it's even less, right?
Would this then? I mean, this is great information, like really good info, Lizzie. Like, well done on this. I think about that Brown Stadium and the six. And I don't know if you guys is in your slide deck or not, but $600 million, which is a cheap stadium, so it's probably more like I think it's a $2.5 billion stadium, but it's like $600 million. To your point on tyranny, they're like, hey, we're going to use this, Ohio, so you don't have to pay as much for a stadium. And you're like, but that's unclaimed money from Ohioans. Well, maybe you should actually just give us that money.
Right.
And do we need a stadium for a team that is awful? No, they should be playing and it's football in Ohio. They should be playing outside anyway. So it's that whole thing is mind-boggling that they're going to try to, well, they're going to build a new stadium. And for those that don't know, they're going to use 600 million of that $2.5 billion price tag. They're going to use the unclaimed funds from Ohioans. Like when you open up, like I found like $350 in my name where I had a bank account that I forgot about and had like $150 in it. My wife had like 200. So they're using those unclaimed funds. There's a deadline to claim them, and they're going to take all that and just use it for the stadium. So that's a perfect example of this, right?
Yeah, so and actually that went to that somebody filed a lawsuit. So kudos to people who know what they're doing. I wish I was a constitutional attorney. I would file so many lawsuits. I would be so happy. And I would do it pro bono. I would be the poorest constitutional attorney ever. um, but somebody filed a lawsuit declaring that that was unconstitutional to take people's money, right? I mean, that's essentially what you're doing. You're going up to someone and just grabbing their wallet, right? And they did actually find that it was unconstitutional, but not on the grounds. It was interesting. It wasn't on the grounds that it's your money. It was more on the grounds that if people were to all of a sudden decide to pull out their funds, they wouldn't have enough to cover that 600 million. So then Ohio's state legislature would be on the hook for 600 million. So it was, but either way, it's right now it's on hold, right? So I think it was like an injunction or something they filed. It's now on hold until they figure out where they're going to get that 600 million from. I'm still waiting for the Bengals to decide they need 600 million. And then like whatever other sports, the Cavs, like like everybody's going to need it. The Indians, sorry, the Guardians. Um and so yeah, the Reds, now everyone's gonna need their hand in your pocket for stadiums. For to your point, for teams that like, and I love the Browns. I grew up outside of Akron. For teams who haven't clearly proven they need it or deserve it. Um, and so, and it's crazy too. Like I was just telling someone, every time they build a new stadium, the ticket prices go up. Like
Yep.
I need fancy things at a football game. I want to be able to afford to buy the tickets, but when they build these fancy new stadiums, and all of a sudden the ticket prices just skyrocket because they got to pay for everything. And then we were just talking about this. Then like the average family can't go to a game, right?
Right. Yeah, the average family can't go to a game, and it's completely different than what, and I'm not, I guess I am getting older now, but I don't feel that old. And I'm like, wow, like back in the day, like the dog pound, and I'm a Steelers fan, so I'm like, I could care less
Oh,
for the Browns. But at the same time, I'm like, well, that it's kind of part of the aura
yeah.
of football, like the AFC North of like, the Browns versus the Steelers. It's like, snow, rain, mud, wind, cold. Like that's part of the game. And anyway, it doesn't matter. It's continue on. I'm sorry to distract you.
So I decided to see like nationwide what our property tax is doing. Right? Is this just Ohio? I mean, because there's so many states now that are talking about property taxes. I mean, it's like it's the buzzword for everybody. I think in all 50 states. Maybe not Hawaii; they might not care, and probably not Alaska. I don't know that they care either. I was like, what's it doing nationally? So this is your state and local property tax revenue nationally in billions. Okay, do you see that line? I mean, it has literally just taken off. And this is only back to 2009. So it's more, I mean, it's about doubled. It's about doubled in what? I can do math. 16 years. That's so this is why you're seeing politicians backtrack, right? I mean, because it's just the numbers are just huge. And I tell people all the time, like, let's not be desensitized to billions, right? You and I were talking about this, like the 100 is the new 20, while trillion is the new billion or million, whichever you prefer. And so let's not be desensitized. If you were to write out billion, it's a lot of zeros. And so this is what's happening in the United States. And actually I think it's happening globally. And so it's just a massive problem that's totally unsustainable. I don't see how anybody in 10 years can afford to stay in their house with their property taxes growing like this. That's just crazy. Like on a fixed income especially. Um and so and you can see so above that I have the list of states that are working to eliminate property taxes, and I just mentioned this is the buzzword. So Florida, right? We talked about that. Illinois, which I thought was fascinating because like Illinois is so crooked. I was like, Illinois, huh? Really? But they are introducing a bill. Now, it probably won't pass because it's Illinois, but they are introducing a bill to phase out property taxes for anyone who's paid for 30 years or more. And then the one thing we are seeing, and Casey Putsch this is actually something that he wants to do for Ohio. We're seeing states form what they call sovereign wealth funds. In North Dakota, it's the Oil Legacy Fund. It's basically saying we're going to rely on state resources. We're going to take revenue from state resources and we're going to invest it. And then with the money the earnings that we get off that investment, we're going to use that to pay for our state's needs. So whether that's natural gas, petroleum, uh, you know, I don't know, rare earth minerals, like whatever you have in your state that is considered a resource. And this is why you're seeing too, like like globally, people are going after places with resources because there's a lot of money. But it can also benefit you as a state if you were to put in this sovereign wealth fund and basically say, we're going to put a tax on whatever oil gets drilled, and that tax is going to go to pay for all of our state services. It's going to get invested, and then we'll live off the investments, basically. So North Dakota is similar to Kansas. They're going to do a similar thing. I don't know how quickly it will take for them to be able to do this sort of thing, but and then, all the states underneath that. So Georgia, Texas, New Mexico, Colorado, Tennessee, blah, blah, blah. They're all working to expand some sort of property tax credits, exemptions, some way to lessen the burden on homeowners. So it really is like this year's hit word, property tax. I mean, like, how geeky could we get? I love it. Right? Like, it's not Taylor Swift and Travis Kelsey. It's property taxes. So so yeah, so that's the cool news, is that, we're not the only state working on this. And we did, so I do want to talk about the legislation that we did pass.
Doesn't look like, when I look at this chart, if we're at 22.5 billion, how in the United States are we at only 200 billion?
That's a really good question. Well, if you take 22.5 billion times 50, I guess that would be
It'd
two.
be a lot.
That would be a lot. I know, I'm like, what's the math on that? My brain hurts today. I'm tired.
I mean,
Um,
just 10, if it was just 10 states at 20 billion, that's 200 billion.
right, right, right. So you
So
would
there
think of
must be, other states must be collecting a lot less in
less.
property tax than what we're collecting, I
Yeah,
guess.
probably. So I think like Alaska's property taxes are like next to nothing. I would assume West Virginia is next to nothing. I would think that, yeah, there's probably some states that their property tax revenue is really low. Now remember, Ohio's seventh highest, so it doesn't get. I don't know. I would be interesting to know what California would be, because that's probably, I'm going to look that up. That's a huge one, I'm sure. Um,
Well, so
and
I
I
just Googled it and it's eight, and Google spit me back, or Gemini came back with 800.
Yeah, this, because I think this stops at 2024. It doesn't
Okay.
quite 2025. But even so, 800 billion probably is more accurate. And
Not much better.
yeah, no, it's probably worse, right? It's probably worse. Yeah, so the latest numbers have come out for household debt, and it's staggering. We're in the trillions for household debt. So we're at $18.6 trillion for household debt as of 2025. And so I looked at it like, well, what I know. And so that averages out to be about 63,000 a person, right? If you think about like your mortgage and dividing it by the number of people that live in your house, right? Plus all your debts. So that's probably how they got to that number. But in 2005, so 20 years prior, we were at 11 trillion, which is still huge. So I just wanted to see, like, okay, well, like, long term, where are we? And so you can see by around like the mid 1980s, it just took off. Um, and now, and this is, by the way, this is household debt to personal income, right? So it's a ratio of how much debt you have, debt to income rate ratio. So it just shows people are way more in debt than what they have. And you and I were just talking about this, like, how are people affording to go out to eat all the time? How are people affording to go on these lavish vacations? It was so funny. Like, I was just talking to someone the other day. I went somewhere and it was just mobbed. It was like a restaurant or something. And I was like, how is everyone just always like, especially go to Easton. I'm like, how is everyone? And it's like Tuesday in the afternoon. I'm like, doesn't anybody work? Like, what's going on? And so, um, but I think it's because it's debt. And I was looking at another chart to see, like, what, mortgage debt versus credit debt versus, and a lot of it is actually student loan debt, which is, is sad. Mortgage debt's kind of actually been, I won't say flat, it's grown, but it's not grown as much as I thought. It's mostly student loan debt and credit card debt that's grown. So we are living, you know, our debt for our asset, right? Our home is our asset hasn't gone up significantly in like 20 or 30 years. Even though you and I were just talking about how much people are spending on homes, but based on their income, you know, but we are spending a lot more on things that we don't necessarily need, right? So credit cards, student loans, things like that. And so you're seeing that's probably too why you're seeing this dramatic jump is probably student loans. Because, by the 90s, Sally Mae loved everybody and wanted everyone to go to college. So and then college tuitions took off, right? Um so that's probably, but I put that up there just so people have an understanding of like, and I wanted to actually overlay this over the property tax to see like, do they follow each other? Because I wanted to know like, as we give more money to the government, we have less money for ourselves. And so then are we putting more money in debt, right, to keep living the lives we're living? And we are seeing that with inflation, right? People are just trying to make ends meet. So they're putting a lot on credit cards, basic things, groceries, gas, whatever. But I wanted to know, is there like some sort of correlation between how much we give in taxes versus how much we have to put into ourselves for debt? I don't know. I haven't done it. I can't prove it. I was just wondering that, maybe there's a correlation. I would think there would be.
Yeah, I'm sure there is. And then like I think this is where like right now people are getting trapped is that I see this. I'll just share this with you. This is the Zillow. This is from Zillow, and this is their affordability index.
Okay.
Basically saying how much of your payment, sorry, how much of your income does a house cost in the US with 10% down? And so it peaked in 2023 at 45%. Now they're saying, Zillow is saying now it's 38%. But you can see where it's traveled over time. And I think, and I hear you saying this, is that it continues to the property taxes and the figures you present at the beginning are insane. That you're paying, $16,000 a year in total tax. When you add in your local tax and Zillow, what they'll do is they present these charts, and then you'll see headlines saying, "Hey, houses are more affordable now. The affordability is returning to the housing market." It's a trap because the average buyer does not feel that way. The
Right.
average homeowner doesn't feel that way. And I think a large portion of that are the things um, that Zillow's not counting,
Right.
which is taxes and insurance. It
Yeah.
has it in here and it says new mortgage payment plus estimated property tax and estimated homeowners insurance. So this is in the US. If I go down, well, there's Akron. You're from Akron. So let's see what that says. That says it's 30% of your income, which is better, but it's still gone up and it hasn't really changed. So it's like my point of bringing this up is people seem like they're getting trapped going, "Oh, they say, the headlines say affordability is returning, but I can't afford anything." And I think a lot of it's taxes.
Yeah. I think inflation, right? Because the biggest way to eat your income is inflation.
I want to ask you about this 500,000 Ohioans that are behind on their property taxes, this delinquency thing. I just looked to yesterday. It's 109,000 in Cuyahoga County alone.
That's crazy.
So, like, at some point, um, when you don't pay your taxes, you're going to get foreclosed on.
At some point, yeah.
So,
Yeah.
like,
And
I
so
think
that's
this
why
is the next
people
bailout.
people don't understand, like, they don't understand the process that happens when you're behind on your property taxes. And this was one of the pieces of legislation I was hoping Ohio would enact, and I think they've given some freedom to counties, but if you're behind, the first thing they do is hit you with a penalty, and you're like, "I'm already behind. I don't need the penalty added." Like, and I know if you're behind on a credit card payment or whatever, they all give you a penalty, right? Um, but but if you're behind on your home, that's not just like missing a credit card payment. You're probably behind because you can't afford it, right? And so they slap you with penalties, and some of these penalties can be upwards of it's to their discretion, but it can be upwards of like 10% of what you owe. So let's say you owe $5,000, you get slapped with a $500 penalty. Well, then let's say you get behind, you're still behind, right? And now you owe $10,000. You're getting slapped with more penalties. And so it's like it's not a humanitarian way to treat people who this is right. This is they own their home, homeowners, right? That's what we call them. We don't call them home renters. We call them homeowners. This is their home. They own it. And so, and then eventually over time, yeah, like, and then you know what's crazy? And somebody had argued with me that this wasn't the case, but I think maybe it was on your podcast. You had talked about how then when you eventually get really behind, they can put a lien on your home and then they can actually sell that lien to a private investor who can then absorb it and then they can eventually take your home, right? So,
Yeah, this right here. So this is tax ease, and I've tried to really find out what this company is about, and it's been very difficult. But there are certain counties in Ohio, Licking County is one of them where we live, that buy they agree basically to buy the tax the properties that are behind on their taxes. They agree to buy those tax liens or those delinquent tax bills, whatever. They agree to buy them from the county in mass. And then they're giving the county the money up front. That's why the county likes it. But what taxis does then is these bills, Lizzie, I've helped some homeowners with this. I mean, they're like completely egregious. They're like 25% penalties and interest rates where if you get behind, it's to a point that there's no possible way you're going to catch up. So then taxis will what they end up doing is they'll either get the property if the person can't pay at all, or if that person ends up selling their property, taxis will be first in line to get the money from the sale. So way it happens was I actually from personal experience, I purchased a house from a lady to flip it, and this was over in Hebron, and she said basically I can't afford the taxes. She owed like $25,000 on a house that was worth 100 grand.
oh
So
no.
I ended up paying her only 75,000 for the house because it didn't make sense for me to pay 100 and the 25, but then I paid all of her back taxes off at closing and that was $25,000. Taxis got the 25 grand. They're like, "Shoot, we ended up buying this they probably invested 10 or 5 grand at the beginning. Now they're getting 25." And this company is like I mean they're mercenaries. I mean, they just collect and collect and collect. Um I think it's the next bailout. I think a bailout is going to come from either the state or it's going to be a national bailout at some point on delinquent property tax.
That's interesting because I was just talking to someone about The Big Short, and I was listening to Mitch Baxler was talking about getting behind on property taxes and bailouts, and, you know, it's 2008 happened, right, because of mortgage-backed securities and blah, 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 and all that stuff, and there's so many people who haven't seen The Big Short, by the way, you should totally watch it, it's such a good movie. Right? Have you seen it?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah, yeah, but I've talked to a lot of people who are like, "Oh, I never seen it." I'm like, "What? How did you miss that?" So but I think you're right. I think there's gonna be some kind of bailout coming at some point, and people don't like to hear this, but Trump's not exactly fiscally conservative, so it, like, wouldn't shock me if he did a bailout, right? And too big to fail, right, on homeowners, and and or the states, but I don't think the states have the money, and the feds would have to print it, and then, you know how that goes, and so, um, that's really interesting. That's a could you imagine working for that company? Like, how do you sleep at night, right? I guess you think you're doing a good thing. I don't
I
know.
mean, I think the title of this is what's crazy is the title at the top it says investing in Ohio communities.
Right, right, that made
And
me laugh.
this company's actually out of Texas. They're not an Ohio company.
Oh,
But they call it I'm guessing this is only a guess that they have taxis, North Carolina, taxis, Florida. And it's a private company. I'm very curious who owns part of this company. It would not shock me if it was a major politician. that owns
That
part of this company. Yeah, who knows, right? It could be. It's. I actually did a video a while back on solar farms in Ohio, and you know, there's a lot of politicians that have their hands in solar farm companies that are just gobbling up Ohio farmland. Like I don't. I'm not surprised by how they're operating. I'm not surprised that Trump is trying to keep home prices propped up. I would not be shocked if there was a catastrophe with property tax and or mortgages. I would not be shocked if there was a bailout. I expect it. Um, because they know that nobody wants a housing crash on their watch. And now they understand the formula to uh, prop it up. They understand the formula, and they'll just keep printing money and devalue currency until it's devalued.
yeah,
I guess.
I think that our just like our state politicians are greedy and obsessed with money, I think federally, nationally, we have become so greedy. And it's so easy for the Fed to be like, "Well, just print money." Right? And here's the thing too about like the stock market. Everyone's like, "Oh, stock market's so good, so good, so good." But like most of these stocks are way overvalued, kind of like your home. And 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 the stock market I think has been artificially propped up because the Fed's just printing money and then pumping it into the stock market, right? So it's just like round and round we go, and then eventually the bottom's going to fall out somewhere. And then we got to print more money, right, to lessen the damage. And I do think at some point the dollar is just we're living in the Weimar Republic and the dollar, bread's like $75 for a loaf of bread. And you're just like, well, I guess we'll just go eat grass today. I don't know. And it's funny because I've been tracking groceries and every time I go to the store, they're more. And I'm like, and then they're like, oh, inflation this period's down. And I'm like, BS, that is such BS. Like, I know my crackers are 50 cents more this week than they were 2 weeks ago. Like, and not including the sale price, right? But um, but yeah, so we'll that's interesting about the solar farms too. So Licking County in particular has lost a third of its farmland. Yeah. Yeah.
Wow,
And then
I didn't know that.
how are we gonna eat? Like, if we keep selling farmland, how are we gonna eat? Yeah, I looked at this because I was looking at what states don't have data centers.
Like if you look at the map of the U.S., something pops out to you immediately. Look at this on the right hand side over here,
Yeah,
and it's deceiving to you sort it by number.
number. Yeah, there's Ohio.
Ohio, 194 in Ohio.
Yeah.
One,
Virginia.
two,
So I
three,
looked at this. Virginia is really high for the size of Virginia, but I guess because of DC, somebody was like, "Well, military and this, that, and the other," and I'm like, "Yeah, but what I was reading is a lot of them are in Eastern. Like if you scroll in on that map, there it's Eastern Virginia. Or sorry, Western Virginia. It's not
right.
Eastern. Like they're not near DC. Like I mean, some of them are, but
But a lot
um,
aren't. A lot of them are down here in like Fredericksburg,
yeah,
um, and then a lot of there's 70 over here near
in
Richmond.
yeah,
And when I look at Ohio, though, there's something that I'm shocked about is when I go to Ohio and I look, there's 113 in Central Ohio of the 191 in the state.
yeah,
And I've got a buddy who lives over in Westerville, and he like there was a there was a building, there was an big empty lot near him, right off of like Central College, and not Central College, Worthington Bridge Road. And there's this big empty lot. It's been empty for I can't remember the last time, or when there was a building there. It's just been an empty dirt lot. And then all of a sudden they started building something, and it's this CoLogic company. And look at all these in Central Ohio. There's a ton of them. And it's a data center that's in the middle of Westerville. It's just right in the middle of Westerville. And so the tax
but
abatement on these things is nuts.
Do you see the circle, the one near Licking or in near us?
Oh yeah. Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
look at
In Johnstown, oh, yeah, and they
yeah.
say, "Oh, it's because of Intel." It's like, no, it's just
Oh,
there's
no,
area.
no, they just put Google in here and they put Meta in here and they put all this stuff in here. And then you know what's crazy? I was looking at my electric bill and I was like, "What?" So I was using less electricity this year than last year. You know, they always show you, like, what you did last year, but my price was more. And I was like, and then I remembered somebody saying, announcing that there was gonna be an increase in electricity, kilowatts or whatever per hour, percent, whatever they do, because they need to offset for all this stuff. And I'm
It's
like,
yeah,
"Well, why?" Like, "What?"
I the stat I read was that Columbus now with data centers, Central Ohio, uses more electricity than Manhattan does.
Yeah, it
Um,
is. And then, they were trying to pass some piece of legislation. The Republicans were trying to pass some piece of legislation in Ohio that would allow them to cycle electricity to data centers over residential homes. So, like, let's say it was like peak hours and they only had so much capacity. They could they could send it to the data centers and basically brown out your home.
yeah, and when I really started diving into these, like I found a couple tax abatement agreements, uh, like from Hilliard schools for data centers. And in the language, I could send this to you. It's pretty startling. It's like they have language specifically outlined that says you have to provide a certain number of jobs to get a 15-year, 100% tax abatement. The payroll that they're required to fill or to bring in, I guess, is like $2 million a year, which isn't that many people. So the average data center, when I pulled this to the stats, it was like 35 people they employ, the total number of people after construction. Construction, obviously, a lot of people. After construction, 35 people, which is nothing. And you're like, well, um, what happens if they don't do that? Well, in the agreement, it says, hey, basically, if you tried to do this and you were unable to bring in this economic boom to the area, as long as you had the intent to do it, then it's all cool. You can still have your tax abatement.
Well, because I had read that what they do is, like, they're gonna promise to bring in a certain number, right? And then they're gonna have AI or, like, bots or whatever, robots, like, they don't need those. Like, so those people are only there even for a short amount of time, and then there's no guarantees on them either. It's so wild to me. Like, I don't AI is a whole other beast because it's like, I don't know. Do you need it? I mean, people have lived for thousands of years without it. And
Um,
but
yeah,
then some upside, right? There is some upside. But is the downside going to swallow the upside? Probably.
well, it's
Probably.
funny. I had somebody actually call me out, and I haven't done this video yet. I have the script done, but I was going to do it outside. It's just been too cold. But and I was going to go on site to this data center in Westerville because it's as close as I can get to a data center. If you try to go out to the ones out where we live, you'll get arrested. Like you can't go out there and film. Bad idea. But this in Westerville, you can walk the sidewalk and the building's right there. So I was going to do kind of like an on-site video. And as I'm as I'm planning out the video, somebody made a comment on my previous data center video and said, "Hey, we're all complaining about data centers using a data center to complain about the data center." Because this is all like what we're doing right now is all somehow connected to a data center near us. So it's like, I think data centers will increase. I think AI is going to increase exponentially. I think, I just think that that's going to continue to happen. I don't think there's any stopping it
No,
whatsoever.
there's not. And I don't know how I don't know. Like, I mean, you can legislate these things, but I don't know. I've listened to some podcasts on, like, super AI and general AI, and, like, just the speed at which it's happening is just it's just mind-blowing, and then what it can do and what like, this is just the beginning, right? My concern with AI is job loss, right? And they say that white collar jobs is gonna be the first thing to go.
Yeah. Don't you think though that like, we'll end up creating new jobs from it that aren't being created now? So as an example, I know somebody who created software on their own using ChatGPT. They like created an application for real estate that was not, it was a brand new application. Nobody had ever thought of it. And they were able to create a company from it and employ people. So I'm looking at it going, well, maybe that like maybe this is our new steel industry for Ohio or the Midwest. I'm not saying that that's what people want or how it should go or it's going to work, but maybe that's how it is kind of trending. Like no more steel mills. Now we're going to have data centers,
Data
and
center.
that's going to employ people in the food chain somewhere, but not necessarily at the data center.
Right. I don't know. I think it'll be interesting because there's data centers, right? And then you have AI, which is kind of a part of that. But then you also have robots and like robotic engineering and things like that that use AI and data and whatever. I don't know because UPS has laid off so many people, like thousands, 10,000. How I don't even know what they're up to now. They just laid off more people because they
Yeah, so is Amazon, right?
lost their contract with Amazon. But right before Christmas, they had laid off people, which that didn't make any sense to me either. I was like, why are you laying people off before Christmas? Don't you know everybody's ordering their packages?
Well, I'm wondering how much of this abatement for property taxes, like the figure I saw was like 20 some $billion in abatements in Ohio. So it's like I wonder how many of those companies that have abatements never fulfilled their promise.
Oh, I'm sure it's a lot, at least in Lincoln County, like in this area, because I think I had talked to somebody. I want to say one of our state legislators who said some of these data centers only have 5 people, right? They might have started with 25 or 35 people, and now they're down to 5, right? So I don't know. Are they still getting the abatement? I assume they are. These people they have money, they have lawyers. I mean, just in dealing with Intel, and not me personally, but like in living in Johnstown and dealing with Intel, these people were so well prepared to come in here. I mean, they knew exactly what they needed and wanted, and they basically just kind of steamrolled everybody else because your local city councilman, no matter how well educated they may be, is not prepared for something like this. Right. And we don't have, like in Johnstown, our city council members don't get paid very much. They get $100 a session. That's nothing. Right. But also, they're not stacked with a team of lawyers, right? Who can and so you've got, like, just average people reviewing contracts, trying to understand the language, and then you've got, like, massive development companies, you've got big companies, and then you've got their legal teams, and, it was actually, you should watch, there's this fascinating podcast about a guy who had gotten involved with Amazon. He was, like, a third party. He somehow got a contract with them, and they took him to the cleaners, and he didn't even wasn't in violation of his contract either. But if they wanna destroy you, they will, because they can. They will find a loophole, they have the money and the means, and they will do it. And, like, you're just like, "Okay, we have along for the ride." And, I I don't know, the data centers the thing that concerns me about data centers is obviously resources and then, land. Right, and somebody said something to me, they were like, "Can't they stack the data centers on top of each other? Like, why do they have to spread out? Like, can we do it like in Japan where everything goes up?" And I'm like, "That's a really good question, I don't know."
Yeah, yeah, it's in 50 years who knows what it'll look like.
It
Somebody
doesn't.
had somebody brought up an idea. I was like, that's a cool idea. It's actually I was going to ask you about this. So I interviewed, I don't know if you saw this interview, but I interviewed the folks for Homestead Heroes.
Oh,
You know those
no.
guys? They're property tax folks, but more they want like reform, not abolishment.
They
They
wanna
know Brian Massey. I guess they know him and they know uh, Beth. I think they were on a podcast or something debating them. Anyway, I had them on just to get a different perspective, and they brought up the fact that it was a really good idea. They were like, why don't they put data centers in like along the Ohio River, well, the Lake Erie, like in Cleveland, where they're like these big industrial facilities that are shut down. Why don't they take those brownfields? Like there's one
Right,
in Newark off of
right,
79 across from Mound Builders. Like, why not put the data center where you can't put homes,
right.
right? But you got to wonder, same with the solar panels, like they have a life expectancy.
Mhm.
So what happens with all those chips, all those buildings as somebody says, well, now we have this technology, those things are going to be
Right.
mothballed in just big metal buildings, I guess.
What happens? Well, and same with, like, my dad worked in the tire industry, and he was like, "So when we were handling materials that we didn't wanna they kind of toss, I guess you would say, or throw out, be done with. And he said we would ship it in a container to Asia and let them deal with it, right? And so right, right. Not that that's like a morally sound thing to do, but that's what we did. And so I have that same question about like batteries, chips, like all these things because I'm not even supposed to throw my light bulb in the trash anymore. And so then I'm like, where are all these batteries going to go? Right? Like, what are we doing with all this? Are we like letting it leach into our ground? What about well and septic? Are we letting it leach into our groundwater? Are we letting it get into rivers and lakes? And there actually was some kind of drama because I want to say in like Findlay, Ohio, somebody they have a data center up there and allow the byproduct to be dumped in Lake Erie, which Lake Erie's already not the nicest of the Great Lakes. No offense. Um, and so like why would we do that? That's not and it's so funny because like, the left is always like, no, the right doesn't care about the earth. And the right's like, the left doesn't care about people. And they're both true, right? So like, how do we care about people and the earth? I don't think we dump things in our waterways. So that would be my only concern about being near waterways. But now they need water, right? So it's like this double-edged sword. So it would be great to have it in brownfields along Ohio River, whatever. And by the way, there's almost 70 counties that are depopulating in Ohio that have no industry. They have nothing. We don't need to put this all in Columbus. The only reason they want it here is for tax revenue and because of infrastructure, right? But
Yeah.
you can build infrastructure, right? Like we can make other counties have infrastructure and we can give them the revenue, right? And this goes back to the greed, I think, Franklin County, because most of those data centers got annexed into Franklin County, right? So, and this leads to this idea that I think Franklin County is going to try and swallow up as much of Columbus as they possibly can for tax revenue because they're greedy. Like you're seeing it with mergers, right? There was oh, what was it? Not Galena, but there was the Westerville somebody merger, and they basically there's these townships, right? There's all these townships around Columbus, and the townships are now freaking out because Franklin County or City of Columbus is coming after them, right? And they need it because they need water, they need revenue, like they need all these things because that's the other thing, like with the data centers here in Lincoln County, even though they're in Lincoln County, well, technically they've been annexed into Franklin County, right, into New Albany, and they need water. So the city of Columbus has had to promise all the water, but the city of Columbus is tapping out on how much water they have, right? So they have no choice but to keep growing to absorb other people's resources. So
Yep.
it'll be interesting. And yeah, I don't know. The data center thing is put him somewhere else. I don't know.
Well, it seems like it's kinda, like, popped up almost out of nowhere. Like, it feels like that. Like, all of a sudden, we went from, like, 0 to 60. Well, 0 to 191, I guess. But it's like the there's a big one that's been approved. I believe it's been approved up in Lordstown, and they're taking that facility that was used to be a GM facility, and they're repurposing it as a data center. I think it's part of, what's the name of that? Is it Stargate? I think they call it Stargate, and it's the guy that, Sam Altman, the dude that runs OpenAI, ChatGPT. Then it's supposed to be like a $500 billion investment or something in the US, and one of them is supposed to go, I think, in Ohio, and I think the unintended consequence of the data center is going to be rural Ohio. There's not gonna be nobody's gonna wanna build a neighborhood near a data center. So
No.
it's like if you are unfortunately a farmer or just you have a rural house and all of a sudden a data center goes in down the street, the chances of you getting top dollar for your house now are probably slim. And so I
Yeah, we
think that's going to continue to hurt the housing market. And you're right about population, Lizzie. I think you're going to continue to see consolidation into the major areas of Columbus or major areas of Ohio, and the rural areas population is going to continue to decline.
to decline. Well, and we have friends that literally like they moved here. I don't remember where they were before, but they bought this beautiful home in this really cute little neighborhood. And then literally like 6 months later, a data center popped up in their backyard. Like, and you're like, what in the heck? And so they've had to like put arborvitae everywhere and but you're like, this was such a nice neighborhood. Like now it's like it's a data center, right? And they're loud and I mean they're obtrusive and like it's not like it's a cute little coffee shop, right? It is nothing, you can't access it. It's not anything for you other than technology, right? But that is happening all over this area.
Yeah.
And that when we were looking to we lived in Powell and we decided to move and I was like, we looked at places that were up against farm fields. And I remember asking like, well, what's that? Like, and it's crazy because I was more concerned about like a Walmart going in behind my house, right? Because I saw that too. That happened in Powell everywhere all the time. My old neighborhood, like Home Depot built behind my old neighborhood, right? So I was like, well, that could be a Walmart, and I don't want a Walmart in my backyard, right? And now I'm like, shoot, that could be a data center, right? You don't want that either. I mean, it's the same thing. You just don't want that stuff in your residential. We need to get better about zoning. I think, we just uh, Ohio's not terrible. I've been to other states that are awful. Like Florida's terrible with zoning. Like I always laugh because you'll like come out of this gated community with like multi-million-dollar homes and like right across the street it's a check cashing place and like a strip joint. And you're like, what in the world? Like who zoned that? Like it's like
Yeah,
next.
it's do you think maybe uh when you think about data centers versus the Walmart going in your backyard, I do communicate when I communicate with clients and they're looking at new builds. It's weird. Like it used to be, I hope they don't build more homes behind me. That it
Yeah,
now it's I hope there's not a data center going in. They're like, oh, if more homes go in, fine. Don't care about that. What I care about is a data center going in. It's I don't know if we need more data centers or not. I'm not in that industry, but if in fact if we do, they have to go somewhere.
right.
So it's like, where do they go? They gotta go somewhere. It's kinda like it's kinda like more housing, right? People are like, "I don't want more housing," but it's gotta go somewhere, and I think it's just something we have to accept. It's gonna be really interesting to see how the Ohio landscape changes. The Midwest landscape changes over time. Uh, I really feel for the rural Ohioans, though, that have lived here for generations, and they're like or decades, or maybe they just moved here for peace and quiet, and now they're like, "Man, I got this monolith behind me now." And then their electric goes up. I found out through that solar farm stuff that most of the solar farm that energy has already been pre-purchased by the data centers, and so the community's not benefiting from it at all. And you can't blame the farmer because he's like, well, my property taxes are ridiculous. I'm going bankrupt. I've got to do something. And somebody comes along and offers him an insane price for his land. He's like, well, what am I going to do? And so you can't blame them for it. But yeah, it's
And that's why I think at least lessening the burden on farmers for property taxes helps everyone, right? Because we rely on them for food. It helps maintain landscape, right? It helps them generationally pass down to their families or, pass on to others. And yeah, farmers just can't they're asset rich, cash poor. Like they don't now obviously mega farms are different. We can get into that and yada yada yada. And they're rolling it deep, I'll tell you that much. But for the most part, like a 200-acre farm or 400-acre farm is not like cash rich, right? Now thousands of acres, sure. They're that's different. But we need to incentivize farmers not to keep selling. I mean, we to your point, it's like it's hard because we need houses. And so where do you get the land? Although I will say this, the government is the largest landholder in the United States. Perhaps they'd like to give us some land. Perhaps they would allow
Maybe.
to put the data centers on their land. I think it would be great if the government let us put our houses and data centers on their land.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, yeah, there's a lot of federal land, no doubt about it. That topic annoys me about, building on federal land, that whole solution or the campaign solution.
Oh, what is
And,
that?
well, but, when Trump ran, it was like, "Hey, we're gonna build on federal land." That was
Oh,
like
yeah.
his thing, right, was supply. And I'm like, "Have you ever looked at the federal lands, like, where the federal land is?" It's like Alaska, Nevada, you know, where people don't live. I mean, generally speaking, you're like, "Well, the biggest housing problem is probably the Northeast right now. Where's the
Yeah.
federal land there to build? There's none." And how many houses have been built on federal land, by the way, this year?
Yeah.
None. So it's, like
Or
you said, it's
but the states all have, I mean, there's and I'm not all for destruction of metro parks and state parks and all this other stuff, but perhaps you could give a couple, you could throw the dog a bone, right? If we needed housing and, we don't want to lose our food supply, right? I mean, there's so many solutions and people just don't want to do it because land is valuable, right? It's so valuable, whether it's for resources, for food, for money, for like whatever it is, it's so valuable. And I think, I just think that we're going to have to, we're definitely going to all have to come together to solve some pretty big problems, I think, in the coming years, especially in
yeah,
Ohio.
agreed. Yeah, I love Ohio. I'm an Ohioan through and through. I want the best for our state, and um, there are a lot of empty lots inside the cities that could be developed. But there's a lot of restrictions in these little Ohio cities too, like in Newark over here, right? They won't allow you to do an ADU. But if they were to say, "Hey, Jason, you own this duplex in Newark and you have a garage back there, you could convert that to a unit and you could rent it out." Great, but they don't allow that, and so you're stuck with homeless. I'm not saying that would solve the homeless problem, but it's like, well, you have to do there. If they were to give some type of incentive somehow or make it easier, less red tape to be able to build little tiny affordable houses, 1,000 square foot homes, that, I would take advantage of that. I know investors who try to build in Newark, and it doesn't, a small single family house doesn't pencil out.
That's interesting because, well, we're heavily regulatory burdened in Ohio. And I tell people all the time, like, that adds to your bottom line, especially when you're building a house. And so you think about like anything in your house. Mark Levin once said this like decades ago. He was like, try to find something in your home that's not regulated, right? So your TV, your toilet, your refrigerator, like even your bedding, your clothes, like everything's been regulated in some way, and that adds costs, right? Because then the companies have to comply, then they have to keep up, and the regulations are constantly changing. And I had given a talk about regulations for home building, and I don't remember the exact number, but it was a lot. It was like $40,000 added to your home building costs to keep up with regulations, you know, um, and so, I mean, to your point, it would be great if we can cut some of those regulations and then you could incentivize a home builder, right? Give them a tax credit or tax abatement, right? Not a big guy, but like the little guy who to say, "Hey, can you prop up 20 homes? Like, could you do it?" And we're gonna cut all the red tape so that the price can be lowered, and we're gonna give you a deal so that you can get it done, and then people can get into their homes that are in a reasonable price entry point. My husband and I talk about it all the time, like, if we won the lottery, we would just put in, like, at cost homes. Like, I would totally do it. He works in construction, and so I'm like, "Let's do it. Wouldn't it be fun?" We'd have to win the lottery first, so everybody say a prayer. But
Well, yeah, anytime the government gets involved,
yeah, well, so speaking of,
things go awry.
I want to tell you about the bills that got passed,
Yes, please, let's get to that, and then we can wrap it up.
about the government getting involved. So,
Yes.
this is my Band-Aids for bullet holes. So basically in December, there was a lot of pressure. Okay, 2 years ago, when everyone started freaking out about their property taxes, I went to my state rep and was like, "What are we gonna do?" And he's like, "Basically nothing," right? Like, "Nothing, good luck," right? It's government. And it's not that he didn't agree, it's that he was kinda like being glass half empty kinda guy. So, he said, "Well, they're gonna start, like, an internal panel, a committee of people to try to come up with solutions." So they did. They proposed different solutions, and DeWine vetoed them all. They tried to pass them through the state budget. He vetoed line item vetoed them. And then DeWine was like, "None of these are gonna work. I'm gonna start my own committee," right? Which is just like more time wasted, right? And so he did. He started his own committee, and then they came back pretty much with the same solutions, like just pared back a little bit more. Um, and so then he was like, "Oh, these solutions are great because they're my idea." Um, so then there were 4 bills that got through the House, the Senate, and DeWine signed them, and he signed them, I think sometime around Christmas, like right before Christmas. And so they are will be fully enacted. You won't see the fruits of them for another year. And so we're going to talk about the fruits because people are all excited now, right? Oh, our legislature did something. They're so awesome. DeWine signed it. I'm like, so band-aids for bullet holes. All right. So we have 4 pieces of legislation, and I have them all written down so we can talk about them. So basically they're gonna lower how much we pay in property taxes, and they're going to limit how fast the taxes can rise. That's what the 4 bills do. And they're lowering the property taxes by $3 billion. So everyone's like, "Oh, that's so much money." And you're like, "Yeah, except that it's $3 billion across multiple years, right?" And we talked about this. It's 13% of what they spend, right? And you have, I think in Ohio, we've got like 69% home ownership. So for easy math, we'll just say like there's 6 million homeowners. Um, so when you divide 3 billion by 6 million, it's really not that much. Um, so the first bill is HB 186. So it will save property owners about $1.7 billion over 3 years. So I did the math because I was like, well, what's that, divided by the number of people and whatever. And we'll go through all that. But basically it's going to expand credits to people who already own their home. So homestead exemption, right, will probably be expanded. And then but what I learned was they basically took money from the credit that they give to landlords called the owner occupancy credit, which you would probably know about. They took that credit not away, I think they reduced that credit, and then they applied it to homeowners. So it's not like they're really saving you any money, right? They just took the money from this point and they moved it to this point. So they didn't reduce their spending, is what I'm telling you, which is really what the Axe Ohio tax movement is all about. Like, we want them to stop spending, right? And we want them to get everything under control. So that was the first thing they did. Now, what people at the state house have said is they're really concerned that now rental prices are going to go up even more because you've removed that credit from landlords, right? So now they're going to have to charge more money to cover all the bills. So then you have HB 335, which limits the growth of inside millage. And so inside millage is the portion of your taxes that automatically rises when your home value increases. And so the automatic increase is now capped at the rate of inflation, which I'm like, well, inflation hasn't been really good, so I don't know that I want that either. So that is going to save homeowners 63 million over 3 years. So I decided to divide the number. So we're going to do 763 million divided by 3 years divided by, so it's 8.2 million households, or homeowners, I should say. So it's $31 a year that you're going to save. Now,
Oh,
I
wow.
oh,
That's gonna be
so
a big, big boom for the economy here.
You had better hold on to your hats because that's about a large pizza these days. Too large.
Right. Right. Yeah, it is. That's why. Jeez.
So
31. Is that just that one portion of the tax credit?
that's just the one, right?
Okay.
Um, but the next one, so you'll laugh. So the next one is HB 129. So that adds emergency and substitute levies to the 20 mil floor. And the 20 mil floor is basically the minimum amount a school district has to raise. So what school districts were doing is they would hit their 20 mil floor and then they would add all these emergency levies, right? So they were bringing in way more money than they actually needed. And that's why we have a $10 billion cash reserve in Ohio for school districts. Like they're sitting on all this cash, right? And then they're like, "Oh, we need more levies." Right? Um so HB 129 adds those emergency levies into the 20 mil floor. So now that levy money will count towards their 20 mil floor. So which that's a good thing. I feel like it should have always been that way, but I won't make any arguments. However, the only thing is it said it will save Ohioans 669 million over 3 years. So across the households, that's $25. Yeah, I don't know how the math, like, unless I'm not doing math right. I'm like, I don't understand. And here's the other thing, like every county is so different. Some counties are already at their 20 mil floor. Some counties aren't at their 20 mil floor. Some counties, like, it's I think it's really going to be county dependent on how much money you save or don't save. And then the last one, which is like, this is like, we'll just throw that in there to make everybody happy. It's HB 309. So it allows the county commissioners to reduce levies if they determine that the entity that's collecting the levy already has more than it needs. Here's the problem with county commissioners doing that. They're really good friends with all the school districts, right? And counties want more money. Nobody wants less money, right? So I don't know that you're going to you might have one, you might have a handful of honest county commissioners who say, "Hey, Jerry, your school district has already raised enough money and I'm going to put a halt to you having any more money." But then you think about this, then they want to get reelected, right? Do you think that school district's going to support them? No. So do you think Jerry's going to do it? No, not unless Jerry is like Kevin, Kiko, as my husband calls him, out of Yellowstone, and he rolls in there and really doesn't give a hoot. But I think that one is just a crock, honestly. I don't think it's gonna do anything.
Like,
Um,
question. What county commissioner who relies, like you just said it, I don't even have to repeat it. It's just so ridiculous. This is awesome that you're breaking this down because I've reviewed it. I've thrown it into ChatGPT and been like, tell me what the heck this means. And even ChatGPT is like, this isn't very good. So it's like, what you're saying then this last one's like, hey, if you're a county commissioner and you don't want to be reelected, then you can stand up and say, hey, Mr. Granville School District, you've had enough money. You don't need any more. And the
yeah,
chances of you being reelected are next to none.
right.
So yeah, that's crazy. And so the very first bill though, how much did that save people?
All right, let me do the math
Because I've got 25 and $31. I'm getting excited.
yeah. So we'll do 1.7. Actually, I'll just do it on my computer really fast. I have a calculator and I usually keep it with me everywhere I go, and my kids have been playing with it. And I know, and I love calculators, so I'm kind of bummed about it. I'm like, I don't know where my calculator is. So let's see here. Let's see. All right, I don't have enough zeros yet. Let's see. I'm gonna do my zeros. Let's see. 1.7 billion. We'll divide it by 3 years because that's about what they've all been running. And then divide it by 8.28. Oh, whoops. 28 million. So that's $64.
Okay. So now we're at 64. So now I'm at what, 120.
Yeah. There
Is
you
that
go.
right? Okay, per year, right?
Yeah, that's per year. And I wonder if it's per person. So like I would think the household number would include you and your wife. So it might be, the way that I had looked at it is like, okay, they're cutting 13% of the total budget. So you might see a 13% cut in your in your property tax.
Okay. But they're really not cutting it though because I'm paying that as a landlord now.
Correct.
Right. And when I looked that up, it wasn't the owner occupancy credit, I don't think, Lizzie. I think it was non-business credit.
Yes,
Like if
that's
I
what.
don't have a business, right? So I got a bill right here. I got my bill, right? I have everything crossed out because I don't want my sensitive info on there. But I have a non-business credit on there. And I think it was like for 6 months, I think it was like $70 or something.
Okay.
So then for the year, it's 140 on that property. And then if I've got 10 properties, then I'm paying another $1,140. And I will absolutely, you can take it to the bank. I'll absolutely increase my rent to cover that. They're 100% correct. I will increase rent from it. I talked to another landlord. I was going to ask you about this anyway. I talked to a landlord about if they were what he'll do, and he said, "Yeah, I'll just raise my rent. Why wouldn't I?" And I was like, "Yeah,
Right.
yeah,
Like $1,000 across however many people, like it's probably what, 10, 15, 20 bucks, right?
yeah,
Um, so it's not like it's not gonna now if you're talking like major apartment complexes, that's a totally different thing. But
yeah."
but it's not helping, right? It's not helping. And
Well, instead of really addressing the problem, they're just shifting the burden,
right,
right?
right.
And
And
it's
then
like,
Rob McCauley came out and said that, like, well, 70% of Ohioans own a home, and so we figure like the credit should go to them, right? And you're like, okay, or you could fix the problem. Like,
yeah, yeah, but then even like the ones I have folks that I rent to that are on Section 8, and so even that I would increase my rent, and then the Ohioans are still going to pay that eventually.
right. We're
Yeah,
all paying everything all the time. Like, and so that's why when they were like, it's $3 billion, we're so proud of ourselves. And I was reading the headlines like the Cleveland.com and the Columbus Dispatch, and they're like, oh, we reformed property taxes. We lowered it by the one article was like billions, right? Because they were all like so excited. And then I'm like, yeah, but $3 billion across 3 years, $1 billion a year, like when they collect $23 billion a year, like, that's nothing, right?
and they abate 24.
So, actually so I did my math wrong, right? Because I told you I assumed so 3 billion of 22.5 billion is 13%, right? So, I assumed, okay, I might see a 13% reduction in my property taxes, but if it's that 3 billion divided by 3, right, 3 years, so it's a billion, right? So 1 billion divided by 22.5 billion is 4%. So if you have, let's just do easy math. If you have $10,000 is your property tax, you're going to save $400.
Right. Um. Again, well, so it's like, yeah. As a politician, I suppose I can understand them saying, "Hey, we got to come up with something to make people feel good." Because my thought was, and I think you alluded to this a few minutes ago, but like I posted this on Facebook because there was like I had to block him. But that I think the Dave Thomas, right? Isn't that the guy that was in charge of this property tax revolution? Um, it I had to block him because I commented on one of his posts and said, "Well, like you're only doing this because you know it's coming."
Right. No,
To
no,
the
no. That's
citizens, right? You can feel it, and and part of the reason why, what one of the reasons why I would want property taxes abolished is, and this may not be right. People probably may not agree with me, but I just want to see the politicians squirm. I want to see them have to figure it out. I want to see them get into a room and really have to figure it out and do their job and go, you know what? We got to figure this out. And I think they can sense that it's coming. And they're like, if I do this, I can guarantee you that if the abolishment of property tax makes the ballot, they're trying to, prime the pump to say, hey, we've already fixed this.
Mhm.
I
So,
think.
I'm gonna call somebody out because I like to call him out and I rag on him all the time, and it's okay. It's all in good fun. But I had to give a talk in on unfortunately, I had to give a talk with Andy Brenner going before me. He's the state senator, soon running for now for state rep because he loopholed himself, right? So this is the thing. Like everyone's like, we have term limits in Ohio, and I'm like, that's crap. But no, we don't. These guys just jump from one ship to the other, like they're like pirates swinging about. So he's term limited in the Senate. So now he's going to go make a run for the House, and that means that the person in the House has to get out of the way. So now she's moving to run to the Senate, right? So Andy Brenner was talking, and he talked before me, and he was supposed to talk about education, was my understanding. Instead, he decided to totally jump on property taxes, and he just set the stage for it's going to be mass pandemonium. It's going to be absolutely insane. The legislature is going to have emergency sessions if this passes, and I'm like, that's going to be great. But it was funny. So he was saying like, you can't pass this. This is crazy, And so then I got up to speak and I said, okay, so Andy and I agree on two things. Like one, we do need, because he said, well, we needed to reform property taxes. And we do. We don't agree on how we're going to do that though, right? And two, we both agree on education reform in Ohio that like majorly needs to happen. Again, we don't really, I mean, we do, but we don't agree on how that needs to happen. But what I said, and Andy didn't stick around to hear me say this, because of course he needed to bolt, because he didn't want to deal with me calling anybody out. I said, listen, I am only here today because Andy didn't do his job 4 years ago. Right? So let's all understand something. Axe Ohio Tax is only existent today because for 4 years, people went down to the state house pleading with their state reps and their state senators saying, please do something to fix property taxes. And they laughed and they slammed doors in our faces, not literally, but figuratively. And they scoffed at us. And so the only reason this whole movement began is because of their own arrogance and lack of problem solving. And so I tell people, like, if they would have done their job 4 years ago, I wouldn't be here on this podcast today. I just wouldn't. I'd be like, I don't know, maybe I'd be in Florida, I don't know, hanging out by the beach, drinking margaritas. Like, who knows? But I would most certainly be spending my time elsewhere doing more fun things and talking about taxes. But it's because of their lack of initiative we're back to humanitarian understanding, right? Like that people are losing their homes. Like people can't afford to keep up with this mass insanity of spending. You are harming Ohioans. You are literally harming your citizens. And because they didn't understand that or want to understand that or even care to understand that, that's why we're here today. So don't blame me. Blame Andy. I'm just kidding. Don't blame Andy. But you know, we need to hold people accountable. And so that's why the movement began, to hold these people accountable. And the only reason they came up with legislation, to your point, was to subdue us, right? They were hoping like, oh, we'll pass all these bills and it'll sound great in theory and we're going to do all this stuff. And we were all like, that's not even close. Now, if you told me you were going to cut my property taxes in half, I might meet you at the table.
Yeah, I get the sense from you, Brian, Beth, not that you all are connected completely, but I get the sense from you that this is like a what is it? What's the term I would use? Like this is like the Hail Mary pass. You know what I mean? Like you're like, hey, I'm just gonna go for the throat. We're just gonna go for the we're gonna go for the most extreme to get you to wake up. I get the sense that if they came to the table with something like that where it was half, or we would reduce our spending by something meaningfully, um, that the term's not pacify you, but it would be a real solution versus just kind of placating us.
Right. I
Right?
think if done something like Florida, right? If they had done something pretty I consider that pretty drastic.
Sure.
Then it'd be like, okay, like let's talk about this because you literally cut my property taxes by a third, right? Or 40%, right? So, okay, that helps, right? That's a starting point. That's like, hello, the art of negotiation, right? So now we can meet at the table and you give us your terms, we'll give you our terms, and we go back and forth. But these guys are like, yeah, we're not going to negotiate. Like, oh, you're we're in charge, right? That's kind of their attitude. And it's this, I think it's become so much more than just property taxes. It's a reminder of who's really in charge, right? I'm in charge. This is my home, right? I'm giving you my tax dollars. Because remember, the government doesn't create anything. They don't create anything. They don't. They purely exist because you allow them to exist. And the only money they have is the money that you grant to them. Like, we forget that simple concept, right? And then we're like, "Well, please give us our money back," you know? And and I think too, by the way, if people had to pay their property taxes in cash, like if we actually had to go to the auditor's office, like every month or every 6 months, like twice a year, people would be having a real meltdown at the auditor's office.
I mean, that's why this is like I've got a stack of these, right? Because, I was fortunate enough to buy what I consider for me and my little fiefdom a considerable amount of properties. So, and I was it was like I was given the money. I worked for it, but I bought them, but I don't have I pay the debt separately. And so they're not rolled into the payment. So I pay these separately. And that's when it's like February 13th, July, whatever it is, or
I
June, end of July or end of June, whatever it is. Um, yeah, it's like a massive bill. I have to plan it. I'm like, okay, well, I've got to kind of rob over here and take over here and finagle this number because it's a serious number. And you're like, yeah, I agree with you. If you have to pay it, and I feel like that's where I get most of the feedback on my channel from are people that don't have a mortgage, right?
yeah,
Because they're paying it directly. They're
because
like,
they're
oh, I owe 2 grand now and it's June, and now I owe another 2 grand and it's February.
yeah.
Yikes!
Oh, yeah, guys, I'm counting down. I'm like, I told my husband, I'm like, "We got one more payment after this one. We got the one payment."
Right on your house. Congratulations, that's great.
Well, yeah, but I mean, like, we have a countdown. I'm like, but also just like, because then property taxes, right? So here's what's interesting. All those bills don't go into effect until 2027. So you can vote to save $400 a year, or you can vote to save thousands of dollars a year. That's basically like that's what you're gonna be faced with, right? So, it's it's been really cool. The movement is I think has done way more than I ever thought it would do, and it's it and people are just we did the gun show recently, and like people were like, I've already signed," like they're all jazzed, and I'm like, or we had people like, "I couldn't find you guys, I'm so glad you're here." And, I've done petitions for, like, politicians and stuff like that, and, like, people do not react that way. They're like, "No, I'm not interested, thanks." But you're like, "Hey, do you wanna not pay your property taxes?" They're like, "Yeah, yeah," like, and so I now make a joke to everyone who signs. I'm like, "Okay, so when this passes on election night, are you gonna remember my face?"
A lot of people. I had several comments that said you should run for office.
Oh,
Um,
no, I would be a terrible politician. I have no poker face. None. I'm so bad. You can read my face, everything about it.
well,
I
maybe
would
that's a good thing though. Maybe you're like just more genuine. Maybe that's what we need. But it would. I've had people ask me that too. They're like, "Hey, you should run," blah blah blah. And I'm like, "There's no way I would fit in there, and I wouldn't be elected because I would just get up there and say stuff. People would be like, "What is this guy talking about? He's nuts!" Like, we can't do that. And I go, "Well, maybe we can do it. You just don't want to." Um, but
Yeah, you
it's
can lot, right?
what's that?
You you can do anything you want. It's just like whether or not they'll let you do it, right?
Right.
So, yeah,
This
no, I tell people this. It takes a very special kind of person. Like, I think about people who like want run for US Senate or US House. I have no desire to leave my family to go to DC to deal with a bunch of schmucks all day. Who like and then you don't know, and then you probably become paranoid because you're like, "Who can I trust? Who can I talk to?" I mean, because I know that's the case at the state level. Like, there are legislators who are like, "I don't feel like I can trust or talk to anybody," right? And so, like, even at the state level, I'm like, "Why would I wanna go downtown and deal with schmucks all day?" Like, there's no way. If I could be a politician in a bubble and just, like, I guess be if I could be a queen, then sure.
Right,
Why
right. But you,
Oh,
well, this is great. So it's so at the end of the day, just to kind of land the plane there, we've got until June. You've got until June to get enough signatures. We've collected them, or what I said we. You've collected them in your group's collected them in 44 counties. So you've met that deadline or that milestone. But now you just have to get the number. If you do get the number, it'll be on the ballot in November. If you don't get the number for some reason, um, I was told, and I think you told me this, or Beth, maybe it was even Brian, said that they're perpetual. The signatures are perpetual. So it's like, it's almost like a foregone conclusion. I mean, not to say that it won't happen right now, but if you miss the mark, it'll just eventually it's coming to roost, I would think.
it's yeah, so the only thing I could see is if we don't get on the ballot this year is you lose momentum, right?
Yeah.
Because like, "Oh, you still haven't done it? Like, what's taking you so long?"
Yeah.
Uh, but yeah, so the way that the ballot language is written, there's no date. It says effective the first day of the following year.
So that would be 27.
Right, so it's effective January 1st of '27.
So if it passed in November of 26, it would be the month, like a month and a half, basically, or whatever.
Correct.
Wow.
Yeah, so that's why the ballot language was so important because let's say we don't get the signatures, right? Or let's say we get really close and they toss out a lot because I know they're gonna do that, right?
Sure.
So, um, we can keep collecting and then it would be effective of the first day of the following year. So that would be 2028, right? But we're working as fast as we can go because we know people are struggling.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And
And
and just signing the petition doesn't mean you're actually voting yes. It
no,
means you're
right.
telling the Ohioans, or you're basically saying, "Hey, I want Ohioans to be able to decide."
Right, and I tell people that all the time because we get some people who are wishy-washy and they're like, I don't know a whole lot about it." And I'm like, "Listen, this is just to get it on the ballot. If, let's say, attack ads come out and you believe whatever garbage they're spewing, you just vote no, right? You can change your mind. Or if the state legislature all of a sudden gets their act together and they do something really drastic, right? We can all vote no. We can all say, we're not gonna pass it, right? I do think to your point, this has been really good at I think this has been a good motivating exercise for the state legislature. And I'm hoping they'll continue working on solving, maybe doing something a little more than $400. Um, then in order to help Ohioans. And I know I thought there was a piece of legislation that they were gonna introduce, and maybe it just didn't get anywhere where they, basically worked out payment plans for Ohioans who are behind on taxes, and they worked out, like, not giving them all the penalties and all that stuff, and I would have really liked to have seen that. I don't know that it passed or it went anywhere, and I'll have to research it, but, that would be something to me that would be, comforting for those people that need it, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and a lot of this though is the fact that, I mean, we talked offline, but the property values aren't growing like they were a few years ago in Ohio and nationally. So the damage has kind of been done,
Yeah.
right? And so now it's like, yeah, you need some, because right now, if you just tell the county, "Hey, and I've never tried this, but if you say, oh, I can't pay my taxes, just put me on a payment plan." Well, it's just gonna, unless you can do away with the penalties, it's just gonna be worse,
It's
right?
kick the can down the road. Yeah.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
does. Well, this has been great, Lizzie. I appreciate it.
Hey,
This is I know the viewers will really like it, and we're gonna do it again. Like, I think we should do it. I can't believe it's February already, but
I know.
maybe you're right. Maybe in when would you think it'd be appropriate to do it? Like April or something?
hoping Brian will have released the number.
Yeah, maybe he
I
will.
haven't I've been trying to, I haven't outright him because I know there's a lot of pressure for him to release the number, and I don't wanna be the one person also adding pressure, but,
Yeah,
I I think we're close to releasing the number.
good. Okay. Yeah, and I
So
know
that
there's a strategy around that, which makes complete sense.
yeah.
And so I
So
think I asked Beth the last time she was on, and she was like, "I'm not telling you." I was like, "Okay."
yeah, and Brian I talked to Brian before this because I was like, "I just wanna confirm how many state legislators, support," and so but, he said, "Yeah, I got somebody, like, ragging on me to release the number," and I was like, "Well, I mean, people just they wanna know because it's exciting, and I wanna do it as a motivator, right? Like, "Hey, we got this far. Let's see it through, folks." Yeah, so just so you know, Licking County's done. Yeah, Licking
Wow.
County, Perry County, Fairfield County, well, actually, I don't think Knox was almost done. So, I mean, all those eastern rural counties, they're all done.
How
Yeah.
many do you have to have in the county in order for it to count?
So it was 5% of who have the number of votes in the gubernatorial election.
See, okay.
So for Licking County, it was like 30. Let's see if I'm doing the math right. I want to say it was like 2,200 or 3,000. I think it was 3,500. And we said we wanted to try to get up to 5,000 just to, overcompensate for any signatures that may not be valid. Yeah. So we're done. I know we're done.
Great.
And now we're just working on like large counties, like Franklin County, Delaware County, like large counties where we're just like mass volume, right?
Yep. That's great. Good stuff. And then I've directed a lot of people to the Axe Ohio website because
Yeah.
people ask, "Where do I sign this?" And a lot of people are like, "I want to sign it online." I'm like, "You can't." And I've got a canned thing I send people, and it seems to, like I said, I mean, it's people care. They really do, and I get a lot of comments on it and a lot of support and just a lot of people thinking, "Hey," and voicing their appreciation that there's a citizen-led group that's doing something. I think that alone is cool.
I know. It's really wild to me that literally like one guy had an idea, then he got a group of people who are like, that's a great idea. And now it's turned into this huge following. I mean, people send me podcasts from like other states that are talking about it. And you're like, that's so cool.
Well, and so you mentioned Mix Vexler. I've communicated with him on email. I was supposed to do a video with him and Travis, who runs that channel, Real Estate Mindset, on property taxes. The one thing they couldn't believe, I don't think they believed me, and I sent them the amendment from the website. They First, they couldn't believe that there was not it wasn't sponsored by a politician. They were like, "What do you mean?" And I said, "Well, it's not. It's not sponsored by a politician at all." And I said, "And if we pass it, it's just completely elimination of all property tax." And they were like, "Okay, so then what backs that up?" And I was like, "Well, there is nothing else on it. It's a very and I told him, I said, "It's probably the reason why it has so much momentum because it's easy to understand.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's simple. There's not like because what they're trying to put together in Texas is like I don't I don't even understand it. It's just there's a lot there. So
Yeah.
it seems like the Ohio solution is like cut and dry. And I think the simpler the better.
Well, and that's why that language was created that way. Because even within the organization, we don't all agree on how to solve it. And we're not all experts, right? So
Yeah.
we're all doing our own homework and our own research, but there are tax experts, right? Like Mitch Vexler, I would consider him a tax expert. And so the idea was also to kind of be like, okay, we got rid of it. Now the state legislators have to fix it, right? And so and like put it back on them because that should have been their job in the first place. I do think it'll be sales tax, and I think it should be. And and Mitch Vexler, he's all about like to pay up the school bond debt. It's going to have to be at like 13% for like 2 years. And so, but yeah. So, anyways, so Mitch Vexler, like it'll have to be at like 13 or whatever percent to pay off the school bond debt. because that's all, that's a whole other topic. But I think just to pay for what we need for services in to keep Ohio running, I don't think it needs to be that high. So
Well, when I did the math to replace 24 billion, it was actually 17%.
yeah, but see, we don't need to replace 24 billion,
Sure. Yeah, and I
right?
understand. Yeah, right. And actually, I mentioned that the other guy I talked to, Matt Deemer, who he was like, I'm fine with that. He goes, if it costs me another 17, 20, 30% to buy a TV, no problem. He's like, I think because I can choose to buy that item.
Right. Well, because you can say instead of buying the expensive Samsung, I'm gonna buy the cheaper TCL.
Right. Or yeah, and if you didn't charge sale because we don't have sales tax on food. So if it was like, hey, we're not going to do that because that would disproportionately hurt people that are that are hurting financially. It's like, yeah, don't do it on food, do it on luxury items, do it. And his idea was like, well, maybe we ought to tax like, hey, if you buy a car and it's over $100,000, it's like a higher tax.
Yeah,
And I was like,
sure.
that's
Sure.
not a bad idea necessarily. Maybe there'll be a tax when you buy a house, like a one-time tax of like,
Right. Well,
who knows what it would be. There's all kinds of ideas there, levers you can pull, and uh, you're right. I mean, and there's probably stuff we're not even thinking of, right? What a way to
yeah.
fund it.
Well, I
Yeah,
I think, and we talked about this, like, if you get rid of the real estate assessment fund for every county, right? So Licking County was $3 million to assess all their properties. Times 88 counties, you're looking at like $250 million that right off the bat, boom, we don't need to spend that anymore. Right. And then I made a joke about fraud, Smalley fraud, right? Like, who knows how many billions of dollars are there that we're going to discover that
I mean,
we're propping up and supporting, right?
what? Part of me understands the pushback that people have that I don't want to vote for something that there's not a replacement for. I understand that, like, why they're thinking that way. But at the same token, Lizzie, like, you could, when you're forced into a corner, you get a lot more creative,
Yeah,
right? So
totally.
maybe the legislators will be like, you know what? Maybe we don't need to spend this money over here.
Yeah.
And nothing essential, but like you said, maybe we need to wipe out that fraud there. Maybe we need to, I don't know, take out this line item here. And then before you know it, you're able to get creative. It's the same thing individuals go through when they have to rebudget themselves.
Right. Right. And I think too, like, if we had given a solution, people would have just ripped that apart. "Oh, that's not a good enough solution.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't you do this instead of this?" And you're like, and so to your point, like, there's so many options, and we could do a one-time tax, right? And you could, I mean, that's what Governor DeSantis had proposed, like a one-time tax, like as with buying a car, you have a sales tax, right? You have a sale, like, so we would do a one-time tax for a home. So I think there's so many solutions, and I don't know, and if you decentralized it, let's say every county could decide for itself, Franklin might do something very different than like Monroe, right? Because of population size, because of income, like I don't know. There's so many options. So
Yeah.
yeah, just
We're not going
support
to figure it out.
and don't buy into the attack ads. That's what I keep telling everyone. Just don't watch TV.
Right, 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 right. No, yeah, my whole Facebook feed's full of like these goofy property tax like attack things on. I can never tell if they're fake or what. I'm like, geez, these are the only one I pay attention to is the Citizens for Property Tax Reform. I think that's Beth's thing, right?
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think that's her page. So I pay attention to that one and Axe Ohio Tax. I pay attention to that one. But there's some other ones that have came up that I'm like, man, this looks like AI,
yeah.
right?
There's so much out there. But yeah, so I jokingly tell people, remember my face when you see it go pass on the ballot. And then don't watch attack ads for the month leading up to November.
Right, right. Good advice. Well, that's great. So I'm going to make sure everybody knows how to get a hold of you. Can I share your slide presentation?
Yeah, of
Okay.
course.
So I'll put a link to that so people can access that. And then obviously a link to how to or where to find signature location for the
Yeah,
petition. All right.
awesome.
And this has been great. We're going to do it again, Lizzie. Thank you for your time. And you're very
Oh,
gracious with it on a Sunday evening.
I hope you guys have a great night.
Yeah, you too. Take it easy. Bye.
Yeah, you're welcome. Bye.